We'll go ahead and get this kicked off. So I'm Jason. Thank you everyone again for joining. This is going to be an action-packed webinar. So I have a few slides and then we're going to spend a lot of time in the demo. So the idea of today's webinar is I'm going to show you a little bit about how to use the Angular grid, and then or show you some demos about the different grids that we have and where to find stuff, then show you how to create a grid with our Angular CLI, or actually our Ignite UI CLI, and then using Angular Schematics with the product, and then show you like how these features tie together. So I'm just going to take one of the demos and I'm just going to bang in a bunch of properties on the grid so you can see like what you would have to do. And then I'm going to wrap it up with App Builder and show you how to do the same thing in App Builder in about 5 seconds versus 10 minutes. And then I also want to show you some sneak peek features of App Builder, which we will be releasing in the next couple of weeks. Primarily the one today is going to be around something cool. I'll show you later, but I'll mention also some other ones as well. So ask questions in the Q&A or chat. With me today is Zdravko. He is the team lead for the product. So he has Zdravko's online. Cool. Yeah, he basically is based in Sofia, and we have team members for this product in Sofia, in Montevideo, Uruguay, and in the United States, in New Jersey. And Brian, who's usually with us, is not with us today. He's at the dentist, but Zdravko is where the buck stops with everything. So if you are a current customer, especially on Angular or App Builder, you have feature requests, issues, things that you want to know more about, pop it into the chat and you will get answers today in this webinar. You will also get this recording in a follow-up email from JJ in marketing. So I'm just going to go right to demo. What I do want to highlight though, and JJ is going to paste this into the chat, is this link here, which is a playlist. So what we're trying to do is a lot more videos on just how to do various things with the product. So today, everything that I'm going to show you is in like this. There's a video here, Angular CLI, and then there's another one, Angular Data Grid tutorial. They're about, this one's a longer one, this one's a shorter one. This one here is about using services and HTTP for REST data. So this playlist, which is in the chat now, watch at your leisure, because it will have a little bit more information than what I'm going to show you today. Just because today, like when you do webinars and live demos, it's easy to forget things that you want to show. And it happens to me all the time. So I just want to make sure that you know about those videos because they do have a lot of cool content. So to get started, what I want to do is go to design and development on the Infragistics website, and I want to go to Ignite UI, then Angular. And what I want to show you really quickly is if I scroll down a bit here, I'm just going to go to view all Angular grid samples. I want to highlight samples that matter that you need to look at. So it's in terms of features, I'm going to show you how to implement all these features in the grid. But there's a few features that are really critical to you being successful. The first one here is called live data / real time. And the way that all of our samples work is if you click this expand to full screen button, it actually opens up in a new window. If you've watched any of the webinars in the last 12 months, you've seen this demo, but this is your prototypical line of business grid that everyone needs. And it has a lot of columns. I think it has 50 columns or 60 columns. We can bump this up to 10,000 records. So you can see that it's really fast at 10,000 records. It's got all these great features like grouping and sorting and things. So I can group here by country. I can do filtering by whatever I want. I can do advanced filtering, pinning, hiding. This one actually supports doing live updates in the data. So you can see here now that there's some streaming data coming into this grid. And you'll also notice I'm using my mouse wheel to scroll right now. things are lickety split fast. So there's no breakdown in performance on the grid when you're doing things like this. This also has some charting integrated into it. So when you click a button, the chart shows up. We also support things like dark theme. For this release specifically, that's coming for 22.1, which is going to be next week. So keep an eye on your emails because we're doing an Angular 14 release, we're doing an app builder release, then we're doing an ultimate 22.1 release all within the next couple of weeks. We've added new UI kits for Bootstrap, Fluent, and Indigo for Adobe XD and Sketch. So all of those themes now are supported all the way through the design to code story. If you're not worrying about design tools in Sketch, then just use them right in the Angular product. There's lots of docs on how that works. But let me pump this down a little bit, and I'll just do a grouping by category. Actually, I'll do a grouping by category and settlement. And oops, let me do settlement. And then I'll do an export to Excel. And I just want to highlight, and I'm going to show you how to do this export to Excel in the demo in a second, but you can see here that you've got your data exported, and we're not just exporting like, random CSV. You actually get real groups just like you did in the grid. So all of samples like this, we're trying to show you how to implement real line of business scenarios. And then of course, all the code is here on these different tabs. And then you can also open this up directly into StackBlitz. The other sample that's really important for you to be aware of is around remote data operations. This comes up in like every call I do with customers, where they want to know like, hey, I just want the grid to be like this dumb display. I want all your UX, the filtering, the sorting, the grouping, but how can I do all of the stuff on the back end and just pump data into the grid? That's what this sample is all about, where we talk about all of the things that you can do with remote data operations. And you can see on the right-hand side, there's real quick jumps to the different sections with different code, all the little caveats, all of the docs and all of the samples are integrated. So when we say that the grid is virtualized, it can handle millions of rows of data. That's true. It can handle millions of rows of data because we are doing column and row level virtualization, but we also let you do any type of remote virtualization. So there's a lot of information on remote virtualization on the grid and kind of how you would do that. And if I look at, let me see here if master detail was one of the ones. I always like to show this because it's kind of cool. It allows you to do like a template on an expansion sort of deal like that, which is pretty slick. And in fact, in one of those videos, I go through how to do this. But there's another section in the sample browser under general where we've got a few different examples. This one here, build real-time Signal R app with .NET Core, Angular reactive forms, build CRUD operations with IgxGrid. These are all super useful. And the sample that we did for this one in particular is like, hey, this is a developer's dream where you've got, a bunch of different grids updating in real time. It's using the doc manager. So I can, dock and undock panes. I can resize panes. I can basically do whatever I want. The next question that always comes up is, what happens if my user changes what the screen looks like? Can you persist it? Absolutely. So everything with the doc manager can be persisted. So the next time that the user comes into the product, they get the same exact layout that they did before. So this is a very powerful sample. It's really slick. It kind of really demonstrates how you can do not only real-time streaming data, but also how you can use things like the doc manager. And on this actions panes here, we've got a few settings like light mode, dark mode, start, stop streaming, change the number of rows or change the data volume, change the update frequency. So this is all meant for you to learn how to implement this stuff in the grid. What we would love to see is that you literally just take this sample and use your own data and then just deploy it, right? That's the whole point of doing these samples. Now, when we talk about grids, we have multiple grids. So I've got here the data grid, which is the flat grid. Then we've got the tree grid. Now the tree grid is the same thing as the flat grid, except it has a tree hierarchy. So you can see, like in a tree hierarchy, your column groupings are in the left-hand side, and then you've got column level summary. So for example, here I've got the roll up of price based on these particular groupings that are here. The nice thing is the base grid is what we use throughout every other grid. So you've got tree grid, flat grid, etc. Works really nicely. Then of course, hierarchical grid, which is what you would expect, straight up master detail, like grids inside of grids inside of grids, which customers, orders, order details, you name it. But all of the features are the same across grids. And then the brand new grid that we just shipped a couple months ago is the pivot grid. So this is an extremely rich user experience in terms of doing data analysis, filtering, grouping, etc., based on flat data that you would just do exactly like inside of Excel. So a lot of coolness here with the pivot grid. If you're doing any sort of data analysis, any sort of financials, this is what you should be using. All right, so enough about that stuff. What I want to do is scroll back up to the top. And the first thing that I am going to highlight is Angular Schematics and the CLI. So I'm going to paste this in to everyone. And like so, this is where we're going to start. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up my command prompt. I'm going to open up my command prompt, Windows 11, and I'm going to stick it over here. I'm going to go over to my dev folder and cdc:/dev. And the first thing that I'm going to do is show you the Ignite UI CLI. So the Ignite UI CLI is over on NPM, and the way you would install it is npm install Ignite UI-CLI. I've already have it installed, so I'm not going to do it again. But once it's installed, it has a prefix called IG, and IG kicks off the CLI. What the CLI does is it encapsulates all of the capabilities of creating an application, generating all the code, and building it for you. So I'm just going to call this sample demo 1.1, and that's the name of my project. I want to make sure I pick Angular. I'm going to use Ignite UI for Angular. I'm going to use, let's say, a default side navigation project structure. And this is sort of a wizard that just walks me through, how to construct my application. Now, at this point, I have a default base application already created, and I could just say complete and run. But what I want to do is I want to add a couple components. I'm going to say grid and list, grid. Let's do a grid with batch editing. I'll just call it batch grid. Hit enter. I'm going to add another component. Let's add a chart. And we're just going to do a category chart, and we'll call it category chart. And let's go ahead and add a scenario. Let's do the fintech grid, which is going to be the same grid that I just showed you in the sample browser. And let's call it fintech grid. And now we'll do a complete and run. What you can do here is if you're a paying customer, you can log into our ProGet server and get the licensed feed so you don't have the watermark. I'm just going to say skip for now. Let's use port 4200, and we are off to the races. So here you should be able to see that it's just waiting to install packages. What I'm going to do is open up File Explorer. I'm going to go down to C:\dev, sort by this date here. And well, what the heck did I call this thing again? We called it sample demo 1. All right, let's go to sample demo 1 here. Sample demo. What? Wait a minute. C:\dev. Oh, sample demo 11, of course. There we go. So here is the application that it actually created. I'm going to right click, show more options, open this with Visual Studio Code, and slide this over from my second monitor here. And if I go into source app, you can see that it's created all of the grid code. It's created the code behind for everything. So you can see it's done things for like, this was the batch editing. So the add row for the setting up the transaction to save the data. It actually created a data source for me. So all of this is generated for free. I'll go to category chart. We added a category chart component. The nice thing about the category chart is it's super simplified. You just say, here's the data, or here's the chart type, and here's the data. And in this case, we let you pick the type of chart that you want to display. You'll actually see that. And then we've got our FinTech grid, which again has all of this local FinTech data that we generate on demand. And then here is all of the column definitions to create this grid. So if I go back to this is actually still going. So we'll kind of let this thing go, because what's going to happen is the browser is just going to pop up out of nowhere. So we'll know when the npm install is done. Sometimes it takes a while. But what I'm going to do is go back here, and I'm going to open up a new command window, and I'm going to change to my dev folder again. And I want to show you another approach to generating grids with the schematics that we include with the project, or with the product. So if I open up the browser and I go back to my my help doc here, where it says Angular Schematics and the Ignite UI CLI, and you look at getting started with Angular Schematics, the whole point of schematics is that you can use command prompts with preset functions to auto-generate pages, or generate components, or generate services, whatever. So we'll go back to schematics in one sec. I just want to show you what this thing did. So it created this grid for us. You can see I can do full editing here, and demo is going well. And we'll just apply that. You can see I have italics on updated data, deleted data, and then I can commit. I can do add new rows. Add new row can be a dialog. It can be right within the grid itself. So you have everything here without really doing much. Here's our category chart. So you can see here, I can just modify the chart type that's being displayed. And then finally the FinTech grid, which is that same grid that we just saw in the product. This was auto-generated with the CLI. So the Ignite UI CLI is super powerful. The idea is you can use it to create new projects, add components to projects, use it as a learning tool. There's many things that you can do with it, but it's really up to you. I just want to make you aware of it. So if you're like, hey, team, go ahead and do this with the Ignite UI, you're like, how do I get started? CLI is a good place to go. So I'm going to close out the CLI. I will mention too, with the CLI, you can add your own template. So if your company wants to have like login forms, you want to have certain types of screens, you can have those in the wizard, or just add them to the schematics here and then use your own schematics. So what I'm going to do is, I'm in my dev folder. I'm going to create a brand new Angular project. So let's call this demo app 22, since the other one was demo app 11. And this is just using ng new. I'm going to follow the defaults. Yes, I want to add Angular routing. We'll do CSS. It's installing the npm packages. But what I want to do when this is done is I want to install Angular Schematics, or the Ignite UI for Angular Schematics. And what that's going to do is allow me to use all of these templates that we have shipped with the product. So for example, we're going to add a new grid, and I'm going to use the Angular Schematics to generate a component called new grid with some defaults. You can also see here, this is how I would do it with the Ignite UI CLI. So it's a very powerful tool that allows you to use all of these templates that would otherwise you would have to like hand code. So let's go down here and let's change to demo app 22. And here I am in demo app 22. So I am going to install my Angular Schematics. And then after you install your Angular Schematics, what you want to do is add Ignite UI Angular to this application. And so you don't have to guess at any of this. because it's all right here in this list. So, oh, how do I add Ignite UI for Angular? ng add Ignite UI Angular. Perfect. Let's go ahead and paste this guy in and hit enter. Now it's going off to NPM. It's going to ask me a couple questions. Yes, I would like to proceed. Yes, add the CSS library. It's updating some files here in my packages. And there we go. So now I'm just going to type in code dot, and this opens it up in Visual Studio Code. So what this did is if we go to source app, I've basically just got my app component, nothing going on here. So I'm going to open up a new terminal, and I want to use this exact schematic that we just looked at. So I'm going to go back to templates, and here, ngg Ignite UI Angular grid new grid. So let's copy that. I'm going to paste this in, and this will generate right in this application a new component called new grid. And so here's the data, here's the component. So this is my IgxGrid, and yeah, everything looks good. So let's just do an npm start, and this will go ahead and kick off this build. And that question, Carlo, is this compatible with Yarn 3? That's something Zdravko is going to have to answer. I don't use Yarn. I'm not familiar with it, actually. I know we use it for a couple things, but I'm always using npm. All right, so here we go. So let's go ahead and open this bad boy up. So this is the default text that you always get with the new Angular app. Let's go ahead and do / new grid, like so. And now if we scroll down, we will see our new grid. So let's do this. Let's slide this over. And I'm going to make this go dock to the left, and we'll do that right here. So what we're going to do is make a few changes here. So what I want to do is go to app-component.html, and I want to get rid of all of that stuff that's inside or at the top of the your default Angular screen. So now I got rid of all that. I just have my grid, and we're kind of ready to go. So I'm going to go to new grid component. And the thing about the Infragistics grid is that it does a couple things automatically for you when it comes to looking at data. And one of them is the auto generate true option. If you do not want to auto generate columns, then you would say auto generate false, but then you have to define all the columns yourself. We're actually going to do that. But first, what I want to do is copy some code in here and show you a few things that you can do with the grid just to light up some features. So over here, the grid is kind of like nothing going on with the grid. So if I want to add a little bit more capability with the grid, I can go ahead and set certain things on the columns themselves, like or on the grid itself. So here, what's my primary key for this grid? I want to use employee ID. Auto generate false. I don't want to have that yet. I still want to auto generate my columns. I changed my display density to compact. It basically tightens up the grid row heights. We have a few properties for that: compact, cozy, and comfortable. And then allow filtering true. What allow filtering does is it lights up this dialog drop down on the kebab, which gives me all of these capabilities with the grid, like pinning, grouping, sorting, etc. Column moving equals true. So now I can do things like column moving, and then filter mode, Excel style filter. That's what this is. You can have different types of filters. We have 3. The Excel style filter is the most common type. So sort of just like that, you kind of light up the grid with a few capabilities. Now I want to set auto generate to false, and I'm going to show you real quick how you would then set more capabilities up on the column level. And so you have this object called the IGX column, and the IGX column is where you're going to set all of the different column things, like what is the first column that I want to show, what's the field name, etc. So instead of typing all this, I'm just going to go ahead and copy in a few of these settings for my first column, which is going to be employee ID. and then everything on the right-hand side will change as I do this. Now, what did I just do? I set a few of the, features that you would expect, like, hey, employee ID is my column name. I want to enable pinning. Yes, you can sort. Yes, you can resize. Yes, it's groupable, et cetera, et cetera. Is it selectable? Yes. So now you'll notice I've got one column here on the right-hand side. Now, if I go ahead and I just add the rest of my columns with those features, so let me copy this guy in. I'll do a Control C and I'll do a Control V. Magically, you'll see that our grid on the right-hand side looks a lot like what it did with auto generate equals true. The difference is now I have complete customization over what's happening on each individual column. So you'll see that I have my summary. So I have count on each one here for age. We do a little bit more: count, min, max, sum, average. And in fact, let me add one more column, which is the date column, which is kind of important because I want to show you a little bit about how the date works here. So let's paste this guy in and it'll recompile, and you can see now I've got the date. And it looks like I've got a spare column thingy here, but it doesn't seem to be making any noise yet. Oh, there it is. So let's move this guy. Whoops. Let's cut him out and put him where he goes, which is right here. So what you'll notice here is I've got all this stuff happening, but all of a sudden now I can do grouping based on my column. I can do sorting based on whatever column I happen to be picking. Now, a couple weird things are happening as well. We've got these column summaries, which is kind of mucking up my whole display. So it doesn't look good when I do grouping. We're going to address that. The other thing I want to highlight is you'll notice here that I've got a number filter, which is correctly determining that this is a number data type. How does that happen? How do I make sure that a number is actually a number? So you actually say, when you set up the column, what the data type is. So here I have number, and for my register date, I've got data type equals date. And what does data type equals date give me? It makes sure that I have all of the correct filters for a date. So if I want to filter this year items, I get my dialog, I just click apply, and this year items pop up. The next thing is I've got the 3 dots, which are now pink. So it's actually showing me, hey, you did a filter here. What I want to do is just apply and do all of the filtering. So the next thing I want to do besides address my summary is I want to enable another cool feature that we have called the toolbar. So with the grid toolbar, you get all of those features I showed you on one of the other demos where you can do the Excel exporting, etc. And so it's just called the IgX toolbar. So within the grid definition, you add your IgxGrid ToolBar. Now the IgxGrid ToolBar has a few features: pinning, hiding, exporting, filtering. Now I have my toolbar just shows up, and I can do things like up here, say I want to pin columns to the left. Let's say I want to hide a couple columns. I can do it from here. But the cool thing is the export. So now I'm just going to say export this to Excel, and it exported my file. Let's open this up, and you can see here is my file. And just like before, if I close this guy out and I'm going to do a grouping by country and I'm going to export this to Excel, we're going to see that this is actually grouped correctly by country, just like you would have expected. You're not writing any code to do any of this. This is all built into the grid, and it all sort of happens magically. So now what I want to do is update how the summaries occur on the grid, just so you know how to do it, because by default, you always have a default behavior, and then you have something that you can override in code. So let's go to our TypeScript for this component, and we have to add a couple things here. So the first thing that we're going to add is on init here, I want to add the instance, or I want to get a handle on my grid, and I need to add the IgxGrid component. And the nice thing is you can just click quick fix when you see these little red squigglies, and usually they do a good job of just auto magically adding what you need. So here you'll notice at the top of the page, when I say import this, I've got my IgxGrid component. So now I'm saying my grid 1 is my IgxGrid component. And then what I want to do on my initialization of the page, I want to go ahead and tell it to use the grid summary position. And here we need to update the import from Ignite UI for Angular again. Let's do a quick fix here. And I've got summary position and grid calculation mode. And I'm telling it to do it at the root level. And I want this to work at the bottom. Now, just so you're not lost on all this stuff, everything I'm showing you is in the docs. So here, if I go to summary and I'll go to the data grid summaries, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And you scroll down, you can see that all of the code and all of the stuff that I am showing you is actually in the doc. So here it says summaries with group by, summaries with group by, and you have summary position, you have summary calculation mode, root level, child only, root and child levels. And then here you've got code showing you what those behaviors are supposed to look like. So you're not lost. So even though I'm kind of rushing through this demo because we only have 30 minutes and we're kind of already over time, everything is in code. Everything is there for you to muck with within the product. So you're never lost. You never have to worry about where to find stuff. So let me see, what else did I want to show today? I'm looking over at my little list here. I think that was it for the grid. So far, what I've shown you is how to use the CLI to create a grid, how to use the schematics to create a grid. And that took maybe 20 minutes to do those two things. Now I'm going to show you how to use the app builder to do the same thing. And actually to use the app builder is sort of a configurator / cheat sheet, right? So I did all of this here in my HTML. I had to do all this column definitions. I kind of had to know a bunch of stuff. You know, I had to like look in the docs. This is where App Builder comes in. If you're a customer, you have access to App Builder. You don't need to buy anything extra. It's all there. So I am going to just do a quick template here, a header plus nav plus content. And in my template, I am going to go to view 1. I'm going to delete what's here. And I'm going to delete this. And you'll notice we've got this new pick layout screen. So I'm just going to do an empty screen, which was the default. I'm going to hit Control E and I'm going to type in grid because now it added the grid. Just as easily, I could have went to the toolbox and dragged a grid on. But this is the fast way to do it. Now, the next thing I want to do is bind some data to this grid. I don't have that same employees data, but I do have some other data already bound in here. And there's a video on how to do data binding with the grid or add data to the grid. So I'm not going to go into that today, but let's just grab the customers table from Northwind. And you can see here that I've got the customers table from Northwind in the grid. If I hit preview, everything is there and it's working, but look what it did. It actually generated this code for me and it created the grid with the data, with some of the properties set on the grid level, but it created all the column definitions for me. So all you need to do is get that schema into App Builder through our data binding, and then you can save yourself all that time writing the code. We also do things like create the data service, the REST service, all that other good stuff. Now, I showed you a lot of features in the demo. In the App Builder, all you need to do is go down to features on the lower right, click the plus sign, and then just select what you want. So you'll notice here, I am selecting, just clicking all of these features. And you'll see here that I've got all the features. Anything that has options, like for example, cell selection, maybe I want single cell selection. Maybe I want the page size to be, 50. Maybe I want row selection to be single or none. All of this is done through configuration and click. I go to preview and look, it did all of this for me. So I don't need to, for the most part, ever go look at the docs. Here's my paginator. Here's the toolbar. All of that good stuff is there. So without really thinking, I'm getting a lot of neat things here. So now before I generate this code, I'm going to go to view 2. I'm going to pick a layout, and I want to show you real quick some other neat things that we've done here in terms of master detail display. So I'm going to select a 3 column row layout. In the left-hand column, I'm going to go to the toolbar. I'm going to type in list, drag it in. On this top guy, I'm going to type in grid over here. I'm going to drag this grid in like so. And now here's the new thing. I'm going to type in chart, and I'm going to drag in the chart. So now for the first time ever, you're seeing charts inside of App Builder, and it's all with the features you'd expect: data binding, different chart type properties, different palettes, everything that you need for charting, you can do here without writing any code. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to say, hey, I want to do data. I want to do employees, and I want to do all the records here for employees. I want to bind here to last name. Subtitle is going to be first name. This image here is going to be an image, and I'm going to bind him to this field called avatar URL. So now I've got this guy. In order to get a scroll bar, I want to say auto on my overflow. I want this to be customers, like so. And I'm going to leave that right where it's at. And now if I preview this guy, you can see that I've got view 1 and I've got view 2. Let's go back to edit. Let's publish this to GitHub. Of course, why on earth would this have already been logged in? Oh no, it's going to ask me for my two-factor authentication. What? Oh God. What? Good thing I'm not sharing my screen on this other screen. Let me go to settings. If anyone knows my GitHub password, please let me know. Passwords, Control F, GitHub. Oh God, sorry about this. I mean, all right, that makes sense. Okay, connect to GitHub, authorize. Oh, thank you. I didn't have to get my two-factor, and we'll call this test demo webinar, and we'll create the repository. Now we've also added another new feature, which is much asked for. If you've been watching any webinars on App Builder, now you can do two-way updates between App Builder and, oh, looks like there's an unexpected error. So maybe we won't push this to GitHub. Let's check it out. GitHub, Jay Barris. Let's go to repositories. Well, it did something. So basically, if I go back here, it did my thing. It could have been a naming conflict. I'm not sure, but you can see my view 1. This is the grid definition that we created. Go back to app. Here's view 2. Here's all the HTML for the layout that we just did. If I go back to source and I go back to, actually, let's go to source apps. Again, sorry, I got services. We don't mess around. Here's the Northwind service. Here's the financial service. So all the data, and this data is hard coded because these are samples within the app. If you have a REST service, it's going to point out to your REST service. But let's go here. Let's grab this. I'll copy this guy. Let's open a new instance of Visual Studio Code. Command Shift P this, git clone, paste. That's fine. Yes, let's open this guy. And it did give some sort of an error message, so I'm not sure what that was all about, but we'll just do an npm install. I'm not too stressed about running this. It'll all run when you try it on yourself. That was a sandbox PR that I was using, not the actual live site, because we haven't deployed this yet. This is a sneak peek of charts that we're going to ship in a couple weeks. But what I want to highlight as part of this round tripping here is that all of the grid code is done for you in App Builder. You do not need to write any of the code that I was doing with the schematics. It's all done for you. And since we've updated the way App Builder, GitHub, etc. works, I can change code here and you can change code in the app builder side. And all it's going to do is merge like it normally would through GitHub. There's no more overwriting. You don't have to worry that, oh, a change over there is going to muck up a change over here. None of that happens anymore. So you are completely safe with everything that we're doing here. So let's just do an npm, or we'll do an ng serve, and we'll see if this runs, or npm start. But yeah, so that's it. Looks like we got a few questions. Definitely ask the team. Yarn, ABC. Yeah, right. That's, yeah. It's actually password capital P. In the export, does the hidden column show up as well? No, but you can tell it to. So there's a whole API for Excel. So if I go back to the docs and here, and we go to Excel, like there is the built-in way, and then we've got this thing called the Excel library. So the Excel library allows you to have complete control over everything that happens during an export. So there's an API, and in fact, maybe we can scroll down here. No, let's look at, using workbooks, for example. So in this case, if I scroll down, like here, workbook, new workbook, set some properties on the workbook. Oh, there's a grid. Let's iterate through the grid columns and rows. Let's export, blah, blah, blah. So complete control over this with the API. Can App Builder connect to private Git servers instead of GitHub? No, GitHub is the way that it works today, Josh, but we will be adding more places in the future. So, and we've gotten that before in terms of feature requests. And what Dravco did is he actually pasted in here the GitHub location for App Builder. So what I would do is I would go to issues, tag something as a feature request, and you can see here, update GitHub without rolling back user changes. Where we've addressed this. I think that's the one we just addressed. But yeah, go ahead and add your feature requests here, ask questions, etc. Like it and star it. Yep, the recording will be available. So will the slide deck, and all of this will be available. We're going to send an email later today or tomorrow, and you'll be able to have access to this stuff. So as I was talking, I didn't see I had a port in use. Let's see if we'll just let this go. If anyone has any other questions, they can ask. But that was all the stuff that I wanted to show today. Using the CLI, using schematics, using App Builder. App Builder is clearly the fastest path to an amazing experience delivering, complex layouts, full CSS, 100% configuration, full data binding, full theming. We have a lot of videos on App Builder. In fact, I'm going to paste one in that we just did recently. Let me go back over here to my GitHub library. Whoops, nope, this guy started up here. So anyway, this was the app we were waiting to start. So you can see here is our grid that we did with all the features. Here is view 2. So I've got my list. I've got the grid up here with my chart. View 3, we didn't do anything with, but this just built this guy with me not lifting a finger. Point, click, done. And that's what the App Builder does for you. Now, the other nice thing about the App Builder is that if I go back to it, and I'll go back to this guy here, and we do new app, we also have a bunch of sample apps. So if you want to like really dig in and say, hey, this is this type of experience is something that I want to build, just go ahead and generate the code, add your own data binding, change this out to your own stuff. This is a WYSIWYG app builder. It's a low code tool. It generates code in Angular and in Blazor. React web components coming soon. and it'll publish it to GitHub so you and your teams can collaborate on this. So with App Builder, we want to completely eliminate all of the complex coding that you have to do today. Yes, please try it with the 2 GB data set. That's the type of support question we get. Like, I tried this and it didn't work. It took 7 minutes. And you're like, oh man, we gotta raise a flag here. Oh yeah, what was your data look like? Oh, it was 900,000 rows. And App Builder took time to load it. But that being said, 2 GB data set with the grid, because it's virtualized, is no problem. So here, let me paste in this video in the chat as well. This is the App Builder overview, which is, what is it, like 6 minutes long, I think. And it tells you everything you need to know about App Builder. And that's what you can send to your boss, say, hey, we need to get Ignite UI because we can use this tool and we can build Angular apps faster than ever. And yep, we also have a Discord channel, Zdravko highlighted, so please use that. And let me go back to my slides here. We sent the playlists and that stuff already. We'll send out these slides as well later. But I want to thank everyone today. I know we went way over, but let us know what you think for Ignite UI for Angular. And in fact, I do have a poll. I always forget to do the poll. I'm going to pop up this poll, and if you're still on the webinar, please answer the poll because it does help us prioritize features. It should have popped up on your screen. And let me stop sharing my screen. And I'll go back on video since we can only do like one thing at a time today. So yeah, the poll is popped up, and open. Is there a timeline for CRUD operations and App Builder? Yes. So January, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, probably in the October-November timeframe. Ken, we are right now doing a bunch of work around grid. We're doing stuff around master detail. So being like, so in the demo that I just did, where like that list on the left wasn't really tied to the list or the grid, we're going to tie all of that together. So then you don't have to write any of that master detail code. So that's the next thing that we're going to do. And yeah, more charts, master detail, but CRUD is high on the list. Can you pull Angular code not built with App Builder? No, you can't do that yet. And probably that's a tough one. Let's see. Export, we answered this. So I think we answered all the questions. Again, if you're still there and you're not eating your lunch, answer the poll questions. But with that, I'm going to let everyone get back to work. I'll leave this open for a few more seconds so we can do the poll, but I appreciate it. If you have any questions, jasonb@infragistics.com is my email, and we will see you at the next webinar in a couple weeks. We also have another webinar tomorrow on doing BI with JavaScript. So go to our website and look for that webinar. Maybe we'll add that to the email follow-up. And then we have another webinar on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, which is around doing BI in Blazor applications. And in fact, those webinars, I think you're not going to find them on the Infragistics site because it's around our Reveal product. So let me just go to resources, webinars here. I'm gonna paste this into the chat just so everyone has it, because there are some cool webinars coming up that should pique your interest with other products that we happen to be shipping. So here I've got, let me share my screen again. If I can find my controls. well, I can't, my controls aren't popping up, but anyway, go to that link that I pasted. And I think we'll also include these links, but we've got one tomorrow or June 8th, embedding and analytics in 10 minutes with JavaScript. And then June 9th, embedding powerful BI in Blazor applications. So with that, I want to thank everyone. I really appreciate your time, and we will see you at the next webinar.